It all started back in high school. Not the big kind you see in movies, where there is 1,000 kids, and you barely know your own classmates. This was different. My high school was small, rural, the kind of place where everyone knew each other. Even if you weren't close friends with someone, you knew their name, you recognized their face in the hallway. We played sports after school, rode our bikes around the neighborhood. We didn't have big city drama. Life was quiet. This was nearly 2 decades ago, but I still remember the atmosphere simple, peaceful, almost boring in the best way. Looking back, one thing I always found odd was how we never really had bullying, at least not the kind you'd expect. No one was getting shoved into lockers or having their lunch money stolen. Sure, kids teased each other, but it was light, nothing cruel. Still, there was always that one kid, right? The one who didn't quite fit in. For us, that was a guy I'll call Luke. He was in my grade, same year, but barely spoke a word. Not because he was awkward or strange. He actually seemed normal, just extremely quiet. We had one class together, a computer elective. The room was lined with those big old boxy computers. He didn't. At first, nobody really paid attention to him. And Luke always sat in the same spot. Second row, far left, completely alone. Everyone else paired off with their friends. But after a while, some of the seniors started making jokes. They'd whisper about how quiet he was, how it was kinda creepy that he never talked. The teacher didn't do anything, just pretended not to see it. Luke just sat there, absorbing it all. One day, someone even threw a paper ball at him from the back of the room. He turned around, and I'll never forget the look on his face. It wasn't just sadness, it was anger mixed with exhaustion. Like he'd been holding something in for a long time. The worst part? It was everywhere. He wasn't bitter when he said it, just tired. He felt like no one wanted him around. Nothing major, but enough to show we acknowledged each other. And I didn't say anything either. I felt bad, but I kept my distance. Until one afternoon, after school, I saw him sitting alone on a curb, not far from the parking lot. I was heading to my car, and something about how he looked made me stop. I asked if he needed a ride, and he seemed surprised. Then, kind of relieved, we talked during the drive. He told me he hated the way people treated him, not just in our class, but in others too. It wasn't just the seniors. Hearing that hit me hard. After I dropped him off, we started saying hi in class. Then I looked. Someone was standing outside. My heart dropped. Then one day, Luke didn't show up. That wasn't unusual on its own, but later that same day, right in the middle of English class, the loudspeaker buzzed to life. Lockdown. I opened the window just a crack and whispered, "What are you doing here? This is not a drill." You could feel the tension shift in the room. That's when it all clicked. The lockdown. The mask. Our teacher immediately shut off the lights and told us to get to the corner. It was dead quiet, and everyone was looking at each other, confused and scared. We stayed like that for a long time. They went to his house, but he wasn't there. Eventually, another announcement came. Someone in a mask, carrying a black duffel bag, had tried to get into the school. That made my skin crawl. Then he asked if he could come in. Said he just wanted to talk. Security saw them and locked the doors before they made it inside. A few police cars showed up, and the day was cut short. That night, I was at home when I heard tapping on my window. Light, steady taps. At first, I thought I imagined it. I crept closer, and through the glass, I saw a face I recognized, Luke. He looked almost calm when he said it. I tried to do something bad. The duffel bag. It was him. I asked if he had caused the lockdown, and he nodded. I was too afraid to ask what he planned. He told me he found my house by remembering a deli I had mentioned during that car ride. He rode around on his bike until he found my car. I told him no, that I couldn't let him in or hear anything more. I said he needed to go back to school and confess. He didn't move, just stood there looking at me. So I did the only thing I could think of. I shouted for my dad. Loudly. That made him bolt. I ran straight to my parents' room and woke them up. My mom was panicking and immediately called the police. When the officer arrived, I told them everything, gave them his name, told them what he said. Apparently, the police had already been looking into the lockdown incident. The next day, they either found him or he came back on his own. He confessed. Word around school was that he got charged with making a terroristic threat. I heard he did time, but he's been out for a while now. I don't know where he is. Part of me wants to feel sorry for him. I mean, I was probably the only person who ever showed him any kindness, and maybe that meant something to him. But at the same time, he came to school in a mask with a duffel bag. Even if he backed out, even if he got cold feet, the fact remains, he was willing to go that far. That's not nothing. I just hope he got the help he needed, and I hope nobody else ever ends up feeling so alone, so invisible, that they think that kind of choice makes sense. This next one takes me back to when I was in 5th grade. It was 2016, and if you remember that year, you probably remember all the chaos around those creepy clown sightings. I live on the outskirts of Philadelphia with my son and my stepdaughter. I say stepdaughter, but really she's more than that. She's the daughter of my best friend Joanne, who was murdered in 2016 by her husband. It was national news. The guy was eventually convicted of multiple murders and is now serving 3 life sentences. After Joanne died, I took her daughter in. I'm a middle school teacher, and I happen to work at the same school my son attends. We became a family. My stepdaughter goes to the same school too. She's a grade above what I teach. So even though our rooms aren't right next to each other, we're all in the same building. On March 30th, 2020, something happened that made me realize how close danger can get, even when you think you're doing everything right. It was just a regular Monday, the kind of spring day where everything feels normal. Around midday, I was teaching math when I got a notification on my phone from the school as emergency system. It said someone was there to pick up my stepdaughter. That wasn't right. She didn't have an appointment, and no close family lived nearby. I replied right away, saying I was at the school and no one should be picking her up. Silence on the other end. Then, finally, the woman said the man claimed to be her biological father. My stomach dropped. The school wouldn't even have that information unless it had been deliberately put there. I immediately called my stepdaughter's classroom and asked them to send her to me. Not long after she arrived, the lockdown alarm blared through the school. I told my students to push desks against the doors, cover the windows, and stay down. I had a gut feeling I knew who this lockdown was about. Turns out, my instincts were right. They were all over the news and social media videos of people dressed as clowns standing near schools, in parking lots, even in the woods. Adults kept saying it was just a dumb trend, some kind of prank. But when you're a kid, it's not so easy to laugh it off. It was weird, creepy, and it stuck with you. At the time, I lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing ever really happened. So when that day started like any other, I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. And looked, and yeah, there really was a clown standing outside our classroom window. It was around 1 p.m., close to the end of the school day, and we were all quietly working on some assignment in class, when one of the girls near the window suddenly gasped and said, "There's a clown outside." At first, nobody really believed her, but a few of us stood up just standing there. He wore this red and yellow clown suit that looked dirty and oversized. His face was painted white, with thick black circles around the eyes and an exaggerated smile. He wasn't doing anything, just staring at us through the glass with this slow, unnatural grin. Then he started waving. Not a happy wave, slow and eerie, like he was playing some kind of mind game. Some kids giggled nervously, thinking it might be a joke. Others froze in their seats, clearly freaked out. Our teacher, Mrs. Riker, walked up to the window and looked the clown dead in the eye, then snapped, "Excuse me, classes are in session. You need to leave." The clown didn't respond, just stood there, still waving. Mrs. Riker called the front office using the classroom phone and stepped into the hallway while speaking quietly. When she returned, she walked over and closed all the blinds. There was something urgent in his tone. The clown was still out there, still waving. It wasn't long before the intercom crackled, and we heard the principal's voice. "Staff, please get your classrooms into lockdown formation." It wasn't loud or panicked, more like he was trying to alert the teachers without setting off the students. But we knew something was wrong. Mrs. Riker immediately turned off the lights and told everyone to get under their desks. She locked the door, then sat on the floor with us. It was dead silent except for a few kids giggling nervously. Others, like me, were definitely scared. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. In reality, it was about 30 minutes. We didn't hear anything else from the hallway. Eventually, the principal came back on the loudspeaker and announced the lockdown was over. We went back to our desks like it was a normal day, but it didn't feel normal. The clown was gone. That's all they told us. No explanation. Just that everything was handled. Everyone was whispering about it. Later, when school ended, I walked home with my friend Chris. We lived just a few blocks away and usually walked together. We were still talking about the clown when suddenly two girls came sprinting past us, looking completely panicked. One of them yelled, "There's someone in the woods." We turned and looked. Behind our school was a small patch of woods, not deep or dense, just a few dozen trees separating the campus from the road behind it. And standing just inside the tree line, partially hidden, was the clown. Same suit, same painted face. He was waving again, slowly, directly at the girls who had just passed us. That time, there was no mistaking it. He was deliberately trying to get their attention, like he wanted them to come closer. Chris and I didn't say a word. We just turned and ran. As soon as I got home, I told my parents. They immediately called the school. Later, I heard from another student that the police were called again, and they checked the area. But they didn't find anyone. The clown disappeared without a trace. No one ever figured out who he was or what he wanted. Maybe he was just trying to scare people. Maybe he was planning something worse. What sticks with me most, though, is that he came back. After the lockdown, after everyone thought it was over. He waited, hiding in the woods, watching kids walk home. Then there was the story of my stepdaughter. This one still makes my stomach twist. 2 hours later, the lockdown was finally lifted. When I opened the door to my classroom, a group of officers was already waiting for me in the hallway. They escorted me out and brought me into a separate room for questioning. I could tell from the way they looked at me that they already had a good idea of what was going on, but they needed the details confirmed. I explained everything, the fact that my best friend had been murdered years ago, how I had taken in her daughter and become her legal guardian, and how her biological father, the man responsible for her mother's death, was currently serving multiple life sentences. Their faces grew more serious with every word. Then they told me something I'll never forget. Earlier that day, a prison bus transporting inmates had been ambushed. A car had come out of nowhere, swerved into the road, and crashed directly into the bus. 10 prisoners died on the scene. 2 prison guards were knocked out cold, and nearly 20 inmates had managed to escape into the chaos. One of them was her father. I felt physically sick. They told me they had already stationed officers at our house, assuming he might try to go there. But then the lockdown happened, and they realized it was something more immediate. He was already on school grounds. They never found him that day. Somehow, he vanished before they could make an arrest. And even though no one was hurt, the idea that he got that close enough to request to pick her up, close enough that the school system didn't immediately know to flag it as a threat, it haunted me for weeks. I kept thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't gotten that notification, if I hadn't called her to my room, if I hadn't trusted my gut. That whole day felt like the universe was testing how fast I could react. I don't know what would have happened if I'd waited just a little longer. I still don't. We had just finished a pop quiz, and I was stuffing my notebook into my backpack when the loudspeaker came on. There was another moment that still gives me chills when I think about it. Lock all doors, lights off, stay quiet. I repeat, this is not a drill. That's when everything changed. The giggles stopped. I was a freshman in high school, and I'll be honest, I thought I had a pretty good grip on what a lockdown meant. We had drills every couple months, and we all treated them like minor inconveniences. They were just practice. But one Wednesday during 4th period, I realized just how unprepared we all really were. It was Earth Science class. After a few minutes, we heard footsteps in the hallway. This is a lockdown. The room barely flinched. Our teacher, Mrs. Chun, sighed and got up to follow the routine. She locked the door, shut the blinds, and told us to move into the corner. A few students were giggling. Some were whispering, but it felt like just another drill until the loudspeaker came back on. Same voice, but different tone. This is not a drill. The doorknob turned again. A girl. Just one scream, echoing from somewhere down the hall, and then silence again. Eventually, the knocks started slow at first, then harder, louder, then silence. He walked away, then again, and again, still locked, still quiet. The whispers died. Mrs. Chun went from mildly annoyed to visibly shaken. Then came the voice. She kept checking her phone while trying to stay calm for our sake. That's when we started hearing the sirens in the distance. Everyone huddled together in silence, listening. Not hurried or panicked, just slow, deliberate steps. Then they stopped right outside our classroom. I held my breath. The doorknob started to jiggle. Someone was trying to open it, slowly, like they were testing it. Not after seeing the doorknob jiggle. A man's voice, muffled but clear through the door. This is just a drill. "You can open the door now." Nobody moved. We all looked at Mrs. Chun, and she shook her head, her finger pressed to her lips. The voice repeated the phrase. The voice kept talking, trying to sound casual, maybe even reassuring, but it didn't feel right. For the next few minutes, we didn't hear a single sound, until suddenly, someone screamed. That was the worst part, how quiet it was after the scream. Some of the girls in my class started to cry. Still, I followed everyone into the closet. A few people claimed they saw shadows moving past the door's tiny window. I thought maybe this was just another test. That's when the panic started to set in. Every time someone whispered, Mrs. Chun would silently hush them, desperate to keep the room as still as possible. Finally, after what felt like forever, we heard real police voices. They shouted down the halls, telling everyone to remain in place. Eventually, they came to our door, unlocked it with a key, and only then did Mrs. Chun move. She checked their badges before even opening the door. When we stepped into the hallway, the entire building felt different. Classrooms were being emptied one by one. There were police officers everywhere, cars outside, even a SWAT van parked near the back. As we filed out, I saw an officer escorting a man in handcuffs. He didn't look like a student, more like someone in his 30s. Pale skin, long dark hair, dressed in all black. Later, we found out he had slipped in through a side door that was left open during a delivery. He wasn't armed, at least not with a gun, but there was something in his backpack. The school never told us what. All they said was that he was mentally unstable and that everything was under control. But I don't think any of us felt like things were under control. Not after hearing that scream. Not after realizing how easy it had been for someone like him to just walk into our building unnoticed. And then there was Northside High. It was the start of a new year, and for me, a new school. I was only 15, a sophomore just trying to find my place in the crowd. That morning, I showed up early around 6:55 a.m. and headed to first period, chorus. Our classroom was tucked away at the far end of the fine arts hallway, right beside the auditorium. I had my headphones in, just minding my business, waiting for the bell to ring. That's when I noticed something was off. The teacher said something, and when I looked up, I saw my classmates heading into the supply closet at the back of the room. I was confused. We had just practiced a lockdown drill the day before. Why were we doing another one? The teacher shut the door behind us, turned off the lights, and we were left sitting in pitch darkness. At first, it didn't feel real, but then I heard sirens outside.